I think it reflects the fundamental intellectual bankruptcy of the internet, that someone like Arianna Huffington should have come to symbolize the supposed revolutionary qualities of it. I mean, she's an interesting woman, but she's about as revolutionary as my dog.
And while the web's promoters constantly talk up its restless, promiscuous, creative energy, the facts suggest this is not always the case. The world of blogging, for example, is going through a crisis. Of the more than 130 million blogs active since 2002, it's estimated over 90% are now dormant.
This power shift is no isolated example. It's a consequence of the web's unique design. Its early supporters believed that a space without rules and regulations would be more equal. But it seems to me that as the web has grown, a paradox has emerged, and the opposite is happening. The very lack of regulation means that those with the most resources can shout the loudest and can impose their brands and their authority.
To grasp the real distribution of power on the web, imagine cyberspace as space. Seen here for the first time is a mathematically accurate model of web traffic in Britain. This is a galaxy dominated by a handful of mega brands. Each month, we search Google more than 38 million times. 1 in 3 of us now have a Facebook page. eBay gets 21 million visits a month. Amazon, 16 million. The web has 1 search engine, 1 marketplace, 1 bookshop, and 1 social network that matter.
I think you can see it in companies like Google and YouTube, the massive aggregation of new wealth and power, the tiny elite of people from mainly Silicon Valley.
When you think about it, it's odd that there are no competitors to Facebook. There's competition for everything in a capitalist society. The way Honda competes with Toyota, the way Pepsi competes with Coke. Does that fact demonstrate, in fact, that the Internet is a limited place for all of its rhetoric about entrepreneurial and cultural freedom?
You see with the Internet a very pure manifestation of the way in which power works. It lends itself to oligarchy, it lends itself to very narrow elites. And the Internet is a perfect reflection of that.
And now, 20 years on, with much of the developing world beginning to come online, the man who invented the web is worried about its future.
The concerns that I have are that there will be some sort of central control. And in some countries, it's the government, and in some countries, it's the companies. And I think we have to be always vigilant about these threats, or the whole web will become too frightening to use.
So does the emergence online of these new power blocks mean the web's leveling days are over? Is the idealistic vision of it as a unique space where we're all equal simply a nostalgic memory? This is the man who had the most ambitious leveling dream of all. My journey has come full circle, returning to Wikipedia. Its creator wanted to unleash the power of the crowd to democratize all of human knowledge. Jimmy Wales is the man behind the world's user-generated information source.
Wikipedia in many ways does break down a lot of hierarchical assumptions that people have. It turns out that it's easier to get quality when you have more people participating, and when you judge the quality of someone's work on its own merits rather than paying too much attention to their credentials.
But as Wikipedia has grown, it's struggled to keep its dream of empowerment alive. It's been forced to toughen up its rules to prevent pages being hijacked. Instead of truth emerging by consensus, increasingly, it has to be policed.
It's funny that we used to be criticized for being too egalitarian, now we're criticized for being too elitist, and somewhere in the middle, we passed the day when everything was fine, but and no one noticed.
A whole system has evolved that attempts to reconcile open access to Wikipedia with the need for accuracy and authority. Editors can lock pages. A few thousand administrators can delete them. 12 members of an arbitration committee adjudicate on disputes. And at the top of the tree, there's Jimmy Wales himself.
We're actually more structured like the British system than anything else. You know, that we have this very interesting mix of democracy and aristocracy and checks and balances.
So do you think that it's human nature for elites and hierarchies to emerge?
I don't even like the terms that you're asking the question, because I think when we talk about elites and hierarchies, people are thinking, or they will tend to think in terms of top-down structures, authoritarian type structures, whereas what I see happening is that communities can come together, create norms and standards and institutions for dealing with those things. But it also involves drawing some lines and saying, look, at some point you're not being constructive and you're not really, we don't want you here.
We've seen how the rampant piracy on Napster, creative freedom offered by blogging and YouTube, and the amateur scholarship on Wikipedia can level the world. But even in these revolutionary web spaces, a counter-revolution has inevitably followed. The web is being colonized by new gatekeepers and new elites. And so the real question for me is whether the web is inherently unequal simply because it mirrors the inequalities and the hierarchies in our world.
Somebody has to be in charge. You know, that's what I was taught in the Army, and I believe it, that you know, there's got to be somebody who is responsible for everything that the system does and fails to do.
Well, hierarchies will emerge. I mean, you know, it's a rare species that doesn't have a pecking order.
I think the web will really take on the contours of what culture has always been. There'll be hierarchies, there'll be elites. Like all technology, the internet is not a cure for human nature, it's an amplification of human nature, both the good and the bad.
I've talked about it being open and free in the sense of freedom and decentralized, but I think it would be very wrong to assume that if you connect a country, it will become equal.
For me, the most important question about the web today is whether its idealistic beginnings have been relegated to history. I don't think so, because I believe the web is more than a simple reflection of our world. Instead, it's endlessly reinventing itself. And by placing so much power in the hands of the people who use it, whenever one part of the web is closed down, colonized, and controlled, the technology opens up new frontiers. It's a space of perpetual innovation. No one can stop it, but we do need to take care of it. This virtual revolution is an extraordinary challenge and responsibility, and an extraordinary opportunity. Watch the interviews we used to make this documentary on our website, bbc.co.uk/virtualrevolution, and follow the links to the Open University to hear more from those reshaping the web and the world. Next time, the web's clash with power and the birth of a dangerous new politics.
And that's next Saturday night. The series continues at 8:15 here on BBC Two. You can see the winning entries of the